Hi, this is for Nielsen. With the online campaigns ratings launching here early next year, what kind of impact has that had on the US and other markets in terms of increase of video spend or understanding of market, etc.?
Adoption in the US has been really strong, and there's a number of agency groups. Group M was the first that have come out publicly and said they're going to make it part of their campaigns. It's been supported by large brand advertisers like Unilever, P&G, AT&T, and I think that's that's where it really starts to drive growth, because when the CMO of Unilever has real confidence of the role that online video can play in their campaigns, then they will commit more investment to that, and we're seeing that happen already in the US.
Jonathan, would you give a media perspective or your perspective on that question?
Online campaign ratings is a product that should give agencies and advertisers the ability to see how many people they reached yesterday with their campaign, and were they in that target audience. And sort of the way that we look at that at MediaCom is that when you start to get that information on a daily basis, then you can sort of consistently change the way you're delivering your brand campaigns to maximize the output for advertisers. And I think, Mark, you had the slides there around kind of online campaigns reaching kind of 30% of people. I think products like online campaign ratings could help sort of change for the same budget, move that number to 40% and 50%, and really increase what advertisers are getting out of that investment.
I just had a question about video sensors. Actually, I had two questions. One is, how does it incorporate DSP in the video space? And the second, are there any plans to incorporate Facebook data?
So I'll answer the second question first, if that's okay. It will incorporate Facebook data from launch that's captured through the panel measurement. So that will be included in the service. There's lots of ways the data could be incorporated into DSPs, and we are working on some of those with individual DSPs, particularly in the US. It could simply be a unique audience figure comes up next to a site when you're looking at buying that. So it could be that sort of guiding information. We are working on models that can also ascribe metrics to cookies within the DSP. So there's a number of ways to incorporate that we're working on at the moment.
Facebook data. I didn't mean the publisher per se, as in buying video advertising. I meant actually using their data to wash the information, to cross-reference and verify the data. So using that instead of the panel.
Okay. So the partnership we have with Facebook at the moment relates to online campaign ratings. So it just relates to post-campaign measurement, and that we actually use Facebook data together with our own panel, because it's important to use our panel to make sure there's not, or to correct for any biases there may be in the data, because we know we've put a lot of effort into making that a representative panel. So we combine those two data sets for online campaign ratings, and we're working together with Facebook on that one at the moment. There may be other opportunities in future. We'll have to see.
I've seen the latest video census results, and a few of us were pretty surprised to see the over 55s so highly represented. And I was wondering, what are you using to base that measure off? I mean, how many people in a sample?
Yeah, so the panel we use is the same panel we use for the monthly hybrid figures in online ratings. So that's above 7,500 now. As I mentioned, we put a lot of effort into getting a representative sample of Australians. If you're into statistics, it's something called stratified random recruitment, and we do a survey by phone, a random phone survey almost every month, to check on changes in the Australian population, internet users population, something called an establishment survey, to see where we need to adjust that representation. So a lot of investment, a lot of time goes into getting that at a market level. So it's to get representation of Australian online users.
Okay, cool. And Jonathan, I had one for you. We're investing, I guess, a lot of time and energy on understanding the audience and the reach and frequency, and all to back it out to a TARP. And do you think that a TARP is the right measurement for online video? And we always say this, like, are we just applying the old measure to the new way we do things?
I guess how we've seen it is that there's a large amount of money being invested in a particular way, and for us, the immediate opportunity is to recreate that, and then sort of allocate that budget across different platforms and treat online video or online pre-roll as equivalent adding digital channels to a free-to-air TV schedule or satellite TV to a TV schedule, and sort of optimize it from that perspective. And so that for us is the kind of starting point, and I think it's where a TARP is an important measure to get that kind of equivalence. I think the guys have shown some great formats and great content, which then allows you to sort of build on that. But for us, this is how we get to scale quickly to then justify the investment in interactivity and formats and creativity.
I'm interested in the distinction you make between what you consider premium content and not. This seems to be a thing that comes up. I look after AdoTube in Australia, and there's a lot of queries around what's premium, what is not. My counterparts in the US, I guess, moved into what I would almost call a post mindset on this, in that premium is determined, particularly when we're chasing audiences like we are and like a lot of networks do. Is premium really about the content, or is it about where the audiences go? And a particular audience obviously is going to be more likely to look at, let's say, user-generated content than another, with young people versus older people, for example. There's a whole lot of factors around this. But perhaps Jonathan and whoever else would like to expand on where you see the distinction between premium and not, and what value you think it plays and why.
So the two things I'd say are, firstly, I think what is premium has to depend on what the advertiser wants. And so what is premium for one person isn't sort of what another person wants, or isn't worth paying a premium for, because they just need to reach that right audience. And the second part I'd go back to is the sort of economies of the production cost of that content. I mean, why should you have to pay as much to run your advertising in front of content that that publisher hasn't really paid to actually produce, versus content where there's been sort of millions of dollars invested in producing and broadcasting that content?
I think there's elements as well around premium content, or really context for advertising, and what role that plays, and does that change the effectiveness of the advertising if it's in the right context, or does it make no difference, and that sort of thing. Certainly in the online space, we've seen from our norms that categories like automotive, for example, very much benefit from playing in the context and being in the right mind space and that sort of thing, whereas maybe a toothpaste, for example, context doesn't really play such a big role. So it will vary by category and how important it is to be associated with that right content. But there's also the brand fit around that content as well that will drive the premiumness of it. Certain brands won't want to be associated with certain types of content, and so that comes into that play as well.
I speak to a lot of publishers, and I see a severe undersupply of premium content. Is there anything we can do to stimulate the production of that premium content?
It's a very good question. One of the interesting things about online advertising generally at the moment is the fact that online has almost infinite inventory, the way it's managed at the moment. So many publishers, if they sell out, can do certain things to create more inventory. They might just add another ad spot, for example, and that creates this concept of so much growing inventory all the time, which results in prices being bidded down all the time. So I think a more structured approach, a more strategic approach to rates around premium inventory, to the negotiations that take place, and perhaps discipline on the part of the publishers to hold their prices, and when they do feel they have premium inventory, would mean that more investment goes against that, which in turn means that would flow on to content producers producing more premium inventory. But hey, that's just my opinion.
It strikes me that there is a lot of video content out there, probably of a sufficiently high quality for most brands and advertisers to be comfortable with. Is actually the sort of lack of supply caused by the fact that people aren't sort of watching enough of it to fulfill the demand from advertisers? And I think if publishers were sort of driving more people to watch the video content they have more effectively, then sort of that would create the inventory. And I guess people have talked about the devices that might help change that. So will people having more people having tablets, will that increase the amount of video watched, or will connected TVs increase the amount of video being watched that is delivered over the internet, and sort of online advertising can start to replace the television advertising in the sort of on the box on the wall?
I think another thing to keep an eye on is the difference in consumption between short-form video and long-form video. So to add to Jonathan's point there, some of the major publishers are already seeing trends of not surprisingly short-form video content, so maybe less than 3 minutes during the day, the working day at work. And then in the evening, in that what we call peak TV viewing time, 6:30 to 10:30 p.m, a much bigger consumption in long-form video content, probably on tablets. The IAB's commissioned a research piece, which is in field now actually, about multi-screen consumer behaviour. So we're trying to measure and look at the behaviour patterns of people watching television, looking at tablets and smartphones. So that'll be released early in the new year. So hopefully that'll give us some idea about how people are using the different screens, when they're using it, and importantly, what type of content they're using on it. And clearly the short form and the long form give different advertising opportunities, both in terms of the environment and the content and the context that all of these guys have talked about, also in terms of the number of available spots. It could almost get to be a TV planning and buying experience.
Felix Gruber from Fairfax. I've got a question for Jonathan. First of all, do you think there's a lack of 30-second inventory supply in market? And if so, do you think that's a barrier for TV budgets to be shifted, considering that the standard ad slot for TV is 30 seconds?
I guess I don't see... I think that kind of, if you wanted to look at any type of video that you could run online in front of different types of content, user-generated or ads that you wanted to deliver in display formats, then there's more than enough video. I think when you start applying the kind of making those decisions about what is premium and important to you, I think that's where you start to cut down the available inventory that you want to run against, and that's where the pricing starts to go up. I don't see lack of availability holding back investment within MediaCom, but I don't know whether that's the case across the industry.
Certainly the studies done by Dynamic Logic and Jonathan, your studies as well, are showing that video and TV and pre-roll aren't going away. So are you guys seeing, this is for anybody, are you guys seeing creative agencies pulling digital experts in the production of creative material that will work cross-platform?
I think that will naturally follow. We see all the interactivity that's now available and technologies that are becoming available to create that interactivity. We see that when we start looking at the effectiveness of the different videos, just taking a TVC and throwing it into the online environment isn't necessarily always the right answer, because it is a different environment. People consume it in a different way. They may not watch it all the way through. They may take different things out of it in a lean forward environment, etc. The ability to take them further with some interactivity is a very powerful thing as well, once you've got someone who's engaged with your brand. So I'm not sure how the creative agencies are gearing up for that at the moment, but I've no doubt that that will happen.
I mean, they'll do whatever's cool. So I think, if they get the opportunity and the brief and the money, some of the stuff we saw the TVN guys present, that Dollar Shave Club video, I mean, that's not a 30-second or a 15-second pre-roll. It was created as content and advertising. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that now. And certainly in the IAB Awards and the Creative Showcase, which we run 6 times a year, we're seeing a lot more creative executions of video content. But, we'd just love to see it explode even more.
As a consumer, when I consume video content, for example, on catch-up TV, I tend to get generally a poor brand experience because I'll see the same ad 12 or 13 times in a row. Do you think this is just the nature of, you know, media buyers not being classified as different or being classified as all the same? Because, you know, certainly, you know, seeing a skin and 12 ads in a row, for me, I walk away from that piece of content going, you know, that just fed up with seeing that brand again and again. How do you think we can change that, or what do you think needs to happen in that space?
Who wants to take that?
I certainly agree with the comment. We certainly see that there can be some very high frequencies delivered in those environments, and we've seen negative effect on brand experience as a result of that. Just seeing the same creative over and over and over again, there is an annoyance factor that kicks into that, and I guess it comes down to being able to plan on a reach and frequency basis across all the different video applications and understanding that side of things as well.
Trying to control frequency is an important thing. I guess that a lot of these questions that are coming up around sort of inventory or sort of creative wear-outs, too many of the ads are coming, I think will sort of fix themselves relatively quickly because of more and more advertisers coming into the space and more inventory. And I think that the point you've highlighted is a challenge if you're a publisher where you don't have enough advertisers to actually be able to sort of cycle through and give that sort of varied experience. So I'm sort of expecting that all of these things will kind of change and be addressed over the next 6-12 months as we see more and more investment come into this space.
I think maybe not so much now, but earlier on it was indicative of a lot of video channels, content or players being sold on a sponsorship basis as well. So if you sold to the sponsor, they basically got all the inventory, and that was obviously not a very good consumer experience. And I think that certainly in my consumption, we're seeing less of that now, and as Jonathan said, more cycling of different advertisers. But you're all going to go away and increase your investment in online video advertising, so you're going to solve the problem yourselves.
Do you think people watching or time watching is more important? For example, the 50 plus age group, you've got a ton of people watching it, but the males 18 to 34, they're watching more of time.
Yeah, I don't want I guess it depends on your campaign objective, but then I realise that's not really answering the question. But that is fundamental. The interesting thing about the 18 to 24 age group, we do another report we put out quarterly with OzTam, which is the multi-screen report, and they in particular are the demographic that show different behaviour, and it's that time spent. It's not only the time spent watching online video; it's the time spent away from TV versus other demographics. So I do think that age group is very interesting for advertisers and their agencies, because it'll be really interesting to see whether that behaviour is a factor of life stage. So whether a lot of that age group like to watch maybe still live at home and like to watch different things from their parents, or whether it is actually a behaviour that will follow through as they get older.
Upcoming IAB events, you can see they're pretty much on the screen. They're also, all the details are on our website,